Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
Otherwise, I will just jump in, Jeff. I just wanted to ask you. I listened to a lot to your music now the last few days, just to get in the vibe of our talk. And I listened to the last one, Rotails, with from the Jazz Festival, and it's such an amazing record. And
I'm really happy with that. And it's just fortunate that the sound guy at Pizza Express, I just casually asked him, "Oh, could you record this?"
Wow. Okay.
And he said, "Yeah, I'll do it for £100." I was like, "Okay, great," and and that was it. So it's just the basic equipment they have in the club, which is good, but it's not like pristine, but it came out pretty well. But I think I'm proud of that because it represents what a band can achieve if it stays together. It used to be, when I started playing, you would go to a club in a city and play 6 nights in a row, and you'd say, "Oh man, by Thursday this is really going to be happening," and you had this luxury of having the music develop very quickly, and personal musical growth as well as the group. And so I was lucky to have some of that experience, in the early 70s to the mid 70s. And now it's the opposite. You work in that band, instead of 6 nights, it took about 6 years for us to reach that same level, but well worth it. And trying to keep it together,
it's beautiful. And also your connection with John, O'Gallagher. I mean, I love John. He's, we did one tour and one album together, and he's one of my favorite guys, as a person, of course, and as a saxophone player, he's a monster.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
And very unique. And, it kind of puzzles me, and it puzzles a lot of people, that he's not more well known, because he's just an incredible musician and a beautiful person. I was just, easy going, and not, maybe that's why. I mean, he doesn't, not a big self-promoter.
He's not a hustler kind of, or something. Yeah. Like,
I mean, he can hustle, but
himself. I know. Yeah.
Lately, he's been working on his
Stuff.
doctorate, and he's finished with that now. So I think he'll be doing some hustling. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you just this. Like, I have the records Line of Sight and Axiom. That's I think that's where you played is with John, right?
Yeah. Well, we've been playing before that.
Oh, you did already before. Oh, well, when was the first time you guys hooked up, actually?
Well, I heard he was in a big band that, and I'm trying to, I think it was Joey Sellers, who's a trombonist.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, sure. I know. Yeah.
You know him? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was his band. This was in New York, and they were playing somewhere. And wow, I heard John take a solo, and I just, at that time, the pianist, and I don't know whether I hooked John up with her or whatever, but we did a record for some label. Oh, I think it was the Blue Note Jazz Club label, which is called Blue something. But anyway, so we did that, and then we just started playing together. And first I started playing in his band, and Axiom was, I guess, the first one. The other one is well, there are three. What's the other one? There's one for Fresh Sound.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Is that it? Oh,
yeah,
no.
I think, well, I have Axiom and Line of Sight. These two I have, but yeah.
Line of Sight, and then Dirty Work.
Yeah, exactly. The trio, right?
Trio with
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of how it started, and then at some point I decided to put a band together with Duane Eubanks, John Hebert, who'd been playing.
Yeah, also, I love John. Yeah.
Me too. And so that was the first record I did for Whirlwind, and and that began what I guess has been 6 albums for that label that I've done as a lead.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, and Tony Malaby, of course, was a great part of that. And there was another group put together with Michael Formanek and Tony, which we used to play at the Internet Cafe. And
oh really? Wow.
And what was it, Tonic? And I think we did a gig there. And never, that was just free improvisation. We didn't.
Oh man, you don't have any like bootlegs or like?
I do, yeah.
Oh man,
I should maybe.
Come on, share that to the world. We need to hear that.
Maybe I can put that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How was it for you when you played John's music in those? I mean, because John is like, I've spoken to everyone that I've spoken to. They say like John writes some of the heaviest music to sight read and stuff like that. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I'm not a great reader, so he's patient with me, and and we get it together. But yeah, that was difficult, but very I don't know. It definitely stretched me, and which I liked.
Yeah.
Way out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's always good. Yeah. Definitely.
So anyways, it sort of turned around where I became the leader and he plays my music, and I like that better.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this. I listen to all these songs, The Interloper, new and old. You've managed like a really nice variety of even the records that I listened to you before, like this approach of your composition that you create this kind of an environment for all the players and then kind of give them space also. Like, what's your approach usually when composing? Let's say for this particular group, these tunes that you wrote, how was the story behind them? How do you imagine the development of a tune?
Well, I don't think in terms of the individuals playing. I just I try to come up with, well, I don't try, it really just, I sit until I get something and try to work with it, and playing it on the piano and seeing where I can take it myself within my capacity to play the piano, and whether it works and whether I like it, and then unleash it on the unsuspecting musicians, and the people I've chosen to have play with me, I definitely can't go wrong. Just letting them. I mean, I very rarely said anything about how to go. I have one tune that's called New and Old.
Yeah, the first one.
There's a middle part it's meant to sound kind of like a little nursery rhyme in a way.
Yeah.
The relationship between my father and myself, through the years. So that's the early years, and they were playing it, and I said, well, it sounds a little bit like the way you're playing it, like the Teddy Bear's Picnic. That's not quite what I want, but I mean, generally, I don't say anything. And also on the live recording, some things happened that had never happened.
Sure.
Yeah, in other words, the tunes went to places they had not gone before. And I guess that was happening right along, but a couple of really pronounced examples of that, you know, where it's like, wow, we're really, you know, we're like a single organism here, you know.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear that. Yeah. I like that one, the interloper. It has like kind of monkish feel to it to me, or some ornate. You know, I hear a lot of ornate also in the music that you wrote. I don't know, maybe it's just me, or I mean this kind of mood. But
people have said that, and sometimes I think it's just the instrumentation or the lack of choral instrument, because not that I don't like ornette. Sure. I mean, I don't like all of ornette, but yeah, I don't, maybe he's influenced me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Monk has definitely influenced me.
Yeah.
Particularly, you know, thinking of a phrase as rhythm before adding the notes, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or the way the rhythm turns around on itself, which I don't do nearly as well as Monk did, but and the, you know, sort of angular.
Yeah. That's what I feel. Yeah. Well, it's instrumentation. Yeah, like you said, that's so important also. Like, but speaking of Monk, I wanted to ask you this, like, you know, let's move ourselves back to, I don't know, 1964 or something like that. And do you remember like the first time you heard Monk, let's say, or like all those guys who kind of blew your mind? What were the first jazz guys in the mid 60s, I guess, probably, that you heard or saw?
Well, see, my mother was a jazz singer in New York. My parents separated when I was 9. So I stayed, you know, in Ohio, Oberlin, Ohio, through high school. But I would spend time with her in the summer in New York, and Christmas vacation and what have you. And she really, when I think about it now, it's pretty unusual then, but basically her parents had died and left her a little money, and she had always wanted to pursue singing jazz, which she was doing in the Ohio area to some degree. So she said, okay, I'm going to New York, and single woman, 1959.
Wow.
And she gets right into the scene and makes friends with just about everybody, you know, and so by the time I'm 11, I'm able, not really, but she's willing to take me to jazz clubs. So she takes me to, for example, the Birdland, where I meet Miles Davis, you know.
Are you serious? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
So this is really how I learned, you know, from, you know, there was a place called Jim and Andy's, which was kind of an all-purpose hangout for musicians, because you could, Jim was great, you know, had a cook, and my mother liked to go there late at night and eat, so that we'd have dinner at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And, you know, anybody might be there, you know, Clark Terry, Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, and you know, Babs Gonzalez and Nipsey Hussle, and trying to think, I mean, you know, comedians, people in the business, you know. I met Alec Wilder there.
Really? Oh, man.
I didn't know. My mother's like, you got to meet Alec Wilder. He's already gone out in the street, and she's chasing after him. I want you to meet my son. And she would say, you know, one day this is really going to mean something to you. You don't know. You don't even know.
Sure. Yet. Yeah.
So that, and in the daytime there were other meeting spots, you know, where, you know, you'd see the great arranger Belford Hendricks, who worked with Dinah Washington and Brooklyn, and what a difference a day makes and all that sort of thing. He did the string arrangements.
Oh, well, yeah.
You'd see people writing tunes on cocktail napkins and then go in the studio and make a demo that would the next week be on the radio. I actually saw this once, you know. So I was really steeped in this thing, and I started playing the drums. Well, I started playing on a cardboard box with a pair of brushes when I was 7, 8 years old, along with Ahmad Jamal and Miles Davis records. So, so I knew I wanted to do this. So I had this added benefit of being able to learn at the feet of the masters, really.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And, to be exposed also. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, for instance, that made me think. I never saw these guys reading music, you know, on the stand. You never saw anybody with music on the stand. Right?
That's true, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, well, I don't need to learn how to read music. I was so hip. I didn't want to be in this high school band or junior high school, right? But I started working with some of the people that had worked with my mother in Ohio, who were in their 40s. They hired me when I was 14. I started playing.
Wow, man.
Every weekend I'm playing, you know, Friday and Saturday, and playing standards and learning to swing on the job, you know. And so, yeah, I've had an incredible life when I look at it, which I've had an opportunity to do. A little reflection over the last year and a half or so. You know?
Yeah, sure. Now's the time, right?
Yeah, that's right. I really thought, that was a nice life. I guess that's it.
No, come on. That's dark almost. No, but it's so romantic what you describe now, actually, you know, because it's, you know, I just saw that on pictures and you read about it, or like in movies or whatever, you know, and it's like, I actually imagine these scenes, what you're saying now. So it's, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, you know, it all changed when I came of age, but at that time, man, people were so nice to me, you know, and to my mother. And, you know, there was no racial thing at all. And it was a predominantly Black scene. And it's part of what convinced me, oh, these are the greatest people in the world. This is the way I want to be. This is the way they treated each other and us, you know. And then too, we would have, my mother and father have a unique relationship in that if she was seeing someone in New York, she would come back to the house in Oberlin and bring them. And my father was like, yeah, okay, it's cool. It was like, wow.
Well, this is an open one, yeah, wow.
A little confusing for me.
Sure.
I didn't see my father with anyone else until after they had gotten divorced when I turned 16. But so on one of those occasions, she brought Papa Joe Jones.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so
that's bizarre.
And Joe was, everyone would say, you got to get Joe out of New York. It's like he was having a manic episode that was dragging on for months. And so he gets to our house and he won't eat and he won't sleep. And all he does, excuse me, is talk. And saying things like, you know, no one remembers me and my internet connection is unstable. Is it?
Oh, it's okay. It's good. Yeah, it's cool.
So me being completely unimpressive with Joe and his ridiculous extravagances, although we did I had another drum set there. Oliver Jackson had left his drums there. So I had mine and his. And so Joe and I every day would play a little bit together. He'd show me something.
Oh, wow.
And he'd say, "No, that's not it. Do it again for tomorrow." It was like a 10-minute lesson, you know. And then he'd go back to, you know, just nonstop ranting. And
Oh, my.
so this is right at the point when Miles Davis' album 4 and More had been released.
Yeah.
Which ironically came out after ESP. So I had heard ESP and My Funny Valentine before that, but I didn't quite get Tony. Somehow it hadn't reached me yet.
Yeah.
We're on 4 and More, and there's So What, and it's ridiculous. You know,
Yeah,
I'm listening to it every day, I'm coming along with it. So hey, Joe, you got to listen to this. And so this was a cruel thing to do. I didn't realize it, but I was so sick of his bragging and everything else.
Oh, shit.
Listen, Joe, listen to this. Yeah. And he listens a little bit. He says, "Yeah, well, I already did all that." And I said, "No, you didn't."
Oh, man. Oh, my God. Oh, shit.
And he goes, "Well, Miles is coaching him." And I go, "I don't think so." And yeah. Well, I thinking about that now. Yes, Joe actually, in his way, did everything.
Yeah, yeah. That's
That
true.
we do today. Only he did it better with more grace and elegance than anyone ever will. You know? But that was a little bit lost on me at that time. Being, you know, it's funny how the students that I teach today, you know, it's the same thing. They want to talk about whoever the latest person is, but the person closest in age,
Yeah.
their contemporary, not even wondering about who did that person listen to?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Which is weird because now you can see and watch virtually anyone on YouTube.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. You know, you just play the record over and over again and try to figure out what's going on, you know, back in the day. And you buy one album, you listen to it for weeks.
Yeah.
I used to play like the first side for a week before I turned it over.
Sure, I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. Like this story, that's amazing, actually. It's like, but I also read that you studied with Alan Dawson.
Yes, and
how did that happen?
The reason for that was, so I've been playing, you know, every weekend with these jazz guys in Ohio. I was also in a infamous psychedelic rock band called the Ant Trip Ceremony, which has a presence on YouTube. So this is 1966, 67, into 68, I guess. And so I'm playing all the time. You know, it's not that I think I'm exactly ready to go to New York, but I know that I need to play with people better than the people playing. I need the next challenge. So my idea, graduating high school, is go straight to New York. Plus, I was familiar with it, you know.
Sure.
And my parents, though they disagreed on most things, said, "No, got to go to college." And in my mind, you know, I don't know what I thought I was going to do exactly. Let's see. Well, I guess Tony was still with Miles, but I didn't know he was leaving. But, you know, maybe I thought or hoped that I would be the next drummer for Miles Day. I mean, it's just audacious dreaming, but being driven to do that. I mean, I used to sit in situations way over my head because I wanted to have the experience.
Like in New York or later, or?
Well, the first time I did it, and I didn't think this would be over my head, but my mother and I were in New York. 65, so I was 15.
Wow. Okay.
We went to see Clark Terry, and he had a quartet, and I remember Dave Bailey was, I guess Dave Bailey was playing with him, and Chuck Lampkin, who was an amazing drummer, was playing in the other band. And so it was like two groups. It was the Embers West. And so between sets, Clark comes over and says hi to my mother and me. They were very good friends, and he was very, very nice to me up until the whole story. So my mother gets it in her head like, hey, Clark, you should hear my son play. And Clark says, okay, why don't you come up next set? Okay, great.
Oh, man.
And I have not postulated this. Okay. So I get up there and start playing, and it's a quartet. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we play a blues or something. I don't know what we play. Maybe it's a blues.
Mm-hmm.
Probably is, because what happens is, then we get to the part where, he's going to trade with me, right? Or play for us. And so I decide somewhere in the middle of the first four that I'm just going to keep playing. I'm going to take 8. It's jazz, right? You're supposed to play what you feel. Because I had never done any trading in any situation up until that time. So I do that, which throws off if it's a blues, it obviously throws off the
12 bar, let's say, yeah.
So we play the whole thing and finish, and I think I only played one tune, I'm not sure, but we stop and the bass player says, man, you really should work with a metronome. Your time is terrible.
Oh, shit.
That's the first thing. So I'm like, uh-oh. No one ever told me that. Then I go back to the table. I go back to my mother's table, and I'm sitting across from her with my back to the bandstand, and Clark comes up behind me and puts his hands on my shoulder, like,
yeah.
Oh, that's nice. You're going to give me a massage or something. It's a little weird, and my mother's smiling. She's all happy, and it's a proud moment, and Clark smiling and everything. And he's putting more and more pressure on my shoulders. I think, and I'm trying to keep smiling. I think I'm going to go like jump out of my seat, and I don't know why he's doing this. And right at the point where I think I can't stand the pain anymore, he whispers in my ear, when I give you 4, you take 4.
Wow. Wow, that's a good one.
And that's the way those guys were.
Sure.
They would just, and especially something go along with it, so you would never forget it. So the pain of that to reinforce the principle that's being espoused, right? So,
wow.
yeah, that was their training. And okay, so Alan Dawson.
No, it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing this one. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah, somehow undaunted by that, I thought I'd just go to New York. That I really not had any formal lessons. I took a few when I was 8 years old.
Oh, okay.
Who I replaced with the people he was playing with when I was 14. So, I'd kind of learned everything from watching other drummers and a lot of listening and just a lot of just playing every day, by myself. And no, you're going to college. So the drummer, Oliver Jackson, said to my mother, oh, well, Jeff should go to Berkeley School of Music. Alan Dawson teaches there. I'll call Alan and tell him.
Oh, wow.
Which I guess he did. Alan was not in charge of admissions, so I don't know. But it was like August, and school was starting in September, so it was very late. And so fine. And Berkeley was still pretty small in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
They were still in the main building on Boylston Street. So I don't know what their accommodations were. I guess there was a dorm maybe on Newberry, but where the new building is now on whatever street that is, and it's not new anymore, the large building. That Berkeley owned that building, but it was a business school dormitory.
Oh, okay.
And a business school as well, I think. So I ended up with 3 business school roommates in this tiny room, with 2 bunk beds. One guy never got out of bed except for meals. Seriously. He was, yeah. And then it was my first time away from home, like that. And it was pretty much a nightmare. And so I don't think to mention to Alan that, oh, Oliver called you, here I am. So I'm just another, student. And he sees where I am, and he's starting me out very basic in a similar way to what I'd experienced with my first teacher, when I was like, look, I have a basic brushstroke, look, I can already play in time or something, So one day I said to Alan, maybe you should hear me play, And he said, oh yeah, well, Alan, beautiful, beautiful man. Yeah. Sometimes I play vibes with my students, so maybe we'll do that sometime. And the lesson would be like 20 minutes. It's supposed to be half an hour, but he was so backed up that
already then. Wow. Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Everyone knew he was the cat, but he wasn't free. He was working for the school. So
yeah, sure.
It wasn't until I was 30 that I really studied with him. I'd spent a year in Boston and just.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Really?
That's when I really studied with him and really, got the Alan Dawson experience, which was.
Oh, wow, man.
Just wonderful in every possible way, and I miss him. But the funny thing that happened there was with Alan. So that would have been, I guess, the last time I'm 1970. I left Berkeley, went back to Ohio and worked in a factory for a year to save up the money to really move to New York. So in 71, I moved to New York. And by 72, Stan Getz hired me. And we were playing in Boston.
How did that gig happen, by the way, like with Stan?
Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but
sorry, sorry, yeah, I interrupted you. Just
as an aside, so I'm playing with Stan in Boston, and 72, and Alan comes to see Stan Getz at Paul's Mall, and he goes, oh, and he says to me, oh, I had no idea, So when I studied with him again, he was like, I don't want to ruin anything here, I don't want to mess you up. And no, it's okay, because I really had to change a lot of things the way I was, to get. For a while I sounded terrible, like the in-between part. I remember Terry Lynn Carrington sitting in on, without asking me one time, and I said, man, why'd you do that? And she said, oh, you didn't sound good,
Oh, wow.
Simple enough. So yeah, it took a while to implement those studies, but I'm so glad I did, but anyway, Stan Getz, well then, okay, so I worked in a factory, moved to New York, and started to meet people. And many other stories around this. It was such a magical time because I remember working in the factory, and getting up at 5 a.m, working 10-hour days, and just it was air conditioner factory. It was all about making this money, and they kept promoting me and working overtime, and they were going to make me a foreman and everything, and everybody hated me because I worked too hard. They planned to stay there for a while. I knew I would leave. So I started to meet some of my peers. I had Dave Liebman's phone number when I left over.
From before? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Someone had given it to my friend, who was a piano player who was going to Oberlin College, and we got a U-Haul and moved our stuff together because he was from New York anyway. And so his thing was that he had worked out a deal where he could complete his degree to graduate by studying with a jazz pianist. So he had asked Herbie, and together we asked Keith Jarrett. I spoke to Keith, and he said, just lock yourself in a room with a piano, which I thought was a good answer. He asked Chick, and then he asked Joe Zawinul, and Joe Zawinul said yes. And then we learned, Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter and Miroslav Vitus are forming a new band called Weather Report. So my friend really, Joe got a free roadie, is what he got. So my friend became Weather Report's first roadie. So I used to go to the rehearsals.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and became friends with Alphonse Mouzon, and I used to call him and ask advice. And so all this stuff was happening. The Mahavishnu Orchestra was forming.
This fusionist kind of vibe, yeah.
Yeah, Miles was. I happened to see one night after Dave Holland had left Miles that Miroslav Vitus did.
Oh, yeah.
Later finding out that's the only night he did. He did in the 60s sub, for Ron. So that was right when Miroslav's Infinite Search record had come out. Anyway, what's happening then is musicians have lofts,
Yeah.
in those days, and you can play all day and night, and we did. So one of the lofts was Mark Copeland's loft, who was Mark Cohen in those days, and
he was still playing saxophone, right? Yeah. I spoke to Mark. Yeah. He told me that. I couldn't believe it first. Yeah.
That loft was unbelievable. I mean, everybody played there. And I'd take my drums around to different lofts on the subway.
Oh, wow.
So play 2 or 3 sessions a day, and no gigs, but just play all the time. And I'm getting to know. And I had Dave Liebman's phone number. And one day after I hadn't really met anybody, I called him, went down to this space that he had, his organization, which was called Free Life Communication. And they had a grant, and they had a beautiful loft, a performance loft, and would put on concerts there and so on. Well, they happened to be playing there that night, just having a session, Richie Byrack, Frank Tusa, and another drummer, Bob Jospe. And so I sat in I played a little bit with them. And so gradually that became Lookout Farm.
That's your story with Richie then, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Richie and I did a lot of hanging out.
Yeah.
Really good guy, really funny.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
And so we formed this band and so on. But Dave was playing with Elvin at that point, hadn't started playing with Miles. I think he just started playing with Elvin. And then one day I was playing a session at Glenn Moore's loft, the bass player.
Yeah, sure.
And Dave Holland was staying there. And I had my sights set on Dave Holland since I'd seen him play with Miles when Tony was still in the band. And I was just amazed because Tony was just throwing everything Tony knew he was leaving to do Lifetime, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know precisely what he was going to do, but this is the most outrageous drumming I think I'll ever see. And Dave was hanging in there because he would leave Wayne and Dave out, and Tony would leave Wayne and Dave out there in the middle of walking, and Tony just sit there like this, and just leave me hanging out to dry. It was amazing. So I thought, man, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to meet Dave Holland and play with him. And I would see him, but he was doing a lot of stuff in New York, but I was too shy to go up to him. He just had this aura about him. I was like, oh. And he's only 4 years older than I am, but well, in any case, so Dave walks in on this session at Glenn Moore's, picks up his bass or Glenn's bass, and we play some tunes, and he's looking at me smiling, and we're just having a good time and everything. And finish, and he says, I'm working with Stan Getz and we're looking for a drummer. Would you be interested?
Oh, wow.
Right as my money had run out, actually a little beyond when my money had run out. And I'm living in Mark's loft and I'm unable to pay my share of the rent. So yeah.
Amazing.
And so that begins, I guess, really what I'd come to New York for, which was to apprentice with a jazz master, and go on the road with them and learn the ropes,
How was the first gig with Stan? Do you remember? Or the rehearsal? Because, I've heard also stories about Stan's first rehearsals or stuff like that. So,
well, first of all, there was an audition.
Yeah.
And Ralph Towner, because I couldn't figure this out. I didn't know at the time. I didn't understand, but I guess Stan was also looking for a piano player too. And I knew, Ralph is great piano player.
He's a master. Yeah.
People know that because he's such a great guitar player. But so we did the audition together.
Really, with Ralph? Man, that's incredible.
Yeah, in some rehearsal studio, and I knew Ralph. Ralph was coming over to Mark's loft all the time, and would play piano with us and so on.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so I got the gig, and Ralph didn't. That's all I knew. And it's like, well, we're playing this big festival like next week or something. No rehearsal. I think we must have played some of the tunes, but the audition was very short. And so dig this first gig. This is insane. So first of all, I get picked up in a limo, in this funky loft, I can't imagine what I had to wear either in those days, but I have long hair, long hair and a beard and hippied out. Ride up in a limo, and Hal Galper is.
Oh yeah.
We pick him up, so he's been playing with Stan for a while, and we go to the festival site, and we're playing opposite Duke Ellington, and Dizzy Gillespie's playing with us.
Oh wow.
And John Hendricks is also performing with us, and there's a couple of thousand people, I don't know. And now I'd been seeing Duke Ellington's band for years because my mother used to go, love to go hear them. And she was too shy to talk to Duke, really. One time we were in an elevator, the Lenox Hotel in Boston, with Duke and my mother and me.
Oh man, what a sight.
So anyway, who did I know in Duke's band? I don't think really anyone that well. But so they come, and they're just right off the bus, and they all look like 150 years old, just completely bedraggled.
Yeah.
And Rufus P.D. Jones says, "Man, can I use your drums?" And I got this little Gretsch kit, I'm thinking, really? You want to use that? Okay, yeah. It's already set up. So this is like the straightening by fire situation. Now, Dizzy had watched me grow up, so he knew me. But when he walked on the stage and saw me behind the drums, he I'll never forget that look. So somehow, you know, I got through it. You know, I was too nervous to be nervous.
Yeah,
I was too overwhelmed, and I had, well, I must belong here, I guess. I don't know. And there is a recording of that Stan had. I don't know what happened to it. It wasn't recorded. But there would be too many rights issues, I suppose. You know. Anyway, that was the first gig.
That's incredible.
We played the band. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And that went on for a couple of years. Jackie, Jeanette, and I ended up. Stan was like, well, Stan was like, look, I got to have a black drummer. It's an all band. I'm like, no, you don't. You're Stan Getz. Come on. And he got really angry. He got angry because he said, so I'm going to get Jack DeJohnette to go to Japan, which I was looking forward to, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Promoter wants a black drummer. It's probably true, you know. I don't know. And I said to Stan, well, because Stan was underpaying me at that point. And he had said in the beginning, I'll pay you such and such, and I'll give you more when I think you deserve it. And I felt I now deserved it. Or this would give me some leverage. So I said, well, you're going to have to pay me a lot more money then. And he goes, who the fuck do you think you are?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
He takes a swing at me, and then he starts crying because I'm his little discovery too, you know. And he had a son that's virtually the same age who played drums too, which I didn't even know at that time.
I didn't know. Wow. I didn't know.
So that was that for a while. And then I get this call. Jack had sent someone else on a gig, and Stan fired him on stage. And suddenly I get a call from Jack Whittemore, Stan needs you tomorrow night in Denver. So then I was able to get my raise, and I was back in the band. So, you know, from 72 to 74. And then by then, Dave Liebman and Lookout Farm had started.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we went right into that. Dave leaving Miles and Richie. I had gotten Richie on the gig with Stan, and so he left Stan. I stayed with Stan longer than he did, actually. And then, you know, full-time Lookout Farm. So this is really what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
A band of peers.
Such a band, man. It's such a group. Yeah.
Play the way you want to play.
Yeah.
And fantastic experience. Amazing.
How did John Abercrombie come into that one? I mean, I'm such a huge Abercrombie fan. You know, he's, for me, one of the greatest guitarists.
For me too.
Most underrated, actually. Also, you know, like
I think also having to do with, as we were saying, with
John. Yeah.
Really an understated personality.
Yeah.
You know. And yeah, I mean, yeah, he was the guy. He was the obvious guy. Everybody knew John Abercrombie at that point was the guy. And he was living also in Mark's loft at that time. So we would play all the time. I don't know, like Dave Liebman and John, you know, how they got together necessarily. They probably knew each other even before I knew either of them. Although, see, when I was at Berkeley, John was, I guess, in his senior year, and I was, I wouldn't dare talk to him, you know. But that's when I first heard him then, like in '68. And I like, you know, okay, this is somebody to watch, you know.
Yeah.
And so he only played with us live at the Berlin Jazz Festival and on the records.
Oh, okay.
Badal Roy played with us both on record and and live after a while. So that added another element. And
yeah.
and that was great. And also we went to India because of him, which was
Oh, wow.
probably the peak experience of my life, or one. I know it changed all of us. It just changed our perspective on the world, you know. So yeah, it was just a tremendous. I mean, we should have tried to stay together. There were some issues that came up that and inevitably do with
Sure. Yeah.
bands, but we've had occasion to regroup a few times.
Yeah, it's beautiful, the drama out, and you know, those tunes, you know, it's such cool sweet hands, like Dr. Faustus and all those tunes, like it's beautiful. Like
that was great. That's a crazy one, right?
Yeah, I love that stuff. You know, it's still, if you put it on now, it sounds really, really fresh and modern. Actually, it's not out of time in a way, you know, like sometimes some music can be, you know, that those records still, when you put on, it's like, man, you know, you're really pushing it, you know, the boundaries, and it's nice.
And I don't think we were too stuck in a particular stylistic.
Yeah.
We're kind of, well, the word was eclectic, I guess, you know, that's one term that was used. But I think it was because we like so many different things musically.
Yeah. It's like early Oregon stuff, you know, with Ralph and, you know, Paul and Glenn. Like it's kind of that vibe when music can go anywhere. I really like that. It's like, man, you really, you know, like Oregon when they went into a free improv that was 9 minutes long. You know, Paul told me that McCandless. He was like, man, we just went there, and it's like 16 minutes, 9 minutes, just the most incredible improv you could hear. And you know,
well, that's the other thing about staying together and playing.
Yeah,
that you learn the skills to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, Jeff, I wanted to ask you. I've read also, like, because this era from 72 to 75, when, you know, what I've read must have been for you incredible. Also because there's this Lee Konitz connection that started already back then, right? I've read.
Yeah, I got to play at the half note, the original half note, because there was one in Midtown for a while with Lee in 72. Now Lee had seen me with Stan Getz when they opened.
After, okay, yeah.
When they opened the new half note, yeah, but this is like I don't know. This is maybe 3 months into.
Wow.
Then with Stan Getz, we opened the new half note in Midtown, and Lee was there, and so he hired me to play a week at the half note, and so that's when we started playing, and there, with great gaps in between. But
yeah,
you know, I think Lee is the person I played with the longest in my life. I mean, from 72 to 2005, not all the time.
But, yeah, sure. You know, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I had that record to listen to the other day, Lunacea, you know, with Vic Turis. I love Vic and Harvey as and bass and Peg, such nice tunes also. Yeah, Peggy Stewart. Yeah, beautiful record, and seem to have like a connection there going on with Lee, so it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But you know, we started with you with the last record, you being a band leader, and I wanted to ask you, when was I think your first debut as a band leader was 91 only, right? Coalescence, that one, or am I missing some records?
That's right. No, that's right. Yeah.
Like, when was the moment that you felt ripe? I'll put it like that. Or where was the moment you were like, okay, I'll become a band leader now? Because it's a great record and it's an amazing band, great players. And how did that happen in that time?
I feel like I'm a good talent scout. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's Kevin Hayes, man. He was like, I don't know, Team Ries, all those guys.
I was fortunate through Dave Santoro, bassist,
Yeah.
to meet Patrick Zimmerli and Kevin Hayes on a gig that Dave had in Waterbury, Connecticut. And, this is on more than one occasion we did this. And I think Kevin was 16 or, and Patrick, roughly the same age, maybe a little bit older, but they were really kids, and and Dave told me before, you're not going to believe this, how well they play.
Yeah.
And so then it was going to be Patrick's band, and we did it like that. And then, but I was in a better position to get some work. And I started a jazz policy at a bar on the far west side, 14th Street, where I was able to play every week. I could have played, I opened it, I told the guy, some people to call, and pretty soon the musicians knew about it. It became this incredible jazz club, among other things. But so that was one place I could play. And I don't think I'd written anything at that point, or I hadn't brought anything in. And the turning point, I was playing at a place called Visiones, where a lot of people played in New York in the 80s, I guess, into the early 90s. And I'm playing this gig, and it's music wasn't really sounding that good, and this thought popped into my mind, well, you never know who's listening, so you gotta, you just never know, you gotta try to do your best, So I'm doing that, and in walks Hermeto Pasquale.
Oh.
Now, I had seen Hermeto, and this may seem strange, but I mean that he's the guy that led me into writing my own music and being a so-called band leader, right?
Yeah.
I saw his group at SOBs, and I really had no idea. I knew he was on the Live Evil album. That's all I really knew. I knew he was kind of crazy. And I saw him with Flora and Airto.
Yeah.
But when I saw him with his own band, it was like seeing Miles, or what they were able to do. Excuse me. And the intricacies of the music and the power of it and the improvisation and the structure and that it just blew me away. And again, a voice in my head said, well, that if you want the music to go a certain way, you're going to have to create that situation, not a certain way, but you have to engineer that. Look at this guy, what he did. So anyway, not long after that, Hermeto walked into this club where I've just had this epiphany about you never know who's listening. And it turns out that he was walking by with one of his saxophone players and could hear outside the drums. And he said, I want to go in and hear this drummer.
Oh.
So then he comes in, and I think we're on a break, and there's a electronic keyboard on stage. And the band, whoever's in the band said, could you play for us? And he gets up and play. Oh, it's amazing. And then the nicest compliment he said to me through his translating saxophone player, that I have a Brazilian heart.
Wow.
And I was so touched by all of this that I started writing a tune for him. And it eventually went into 6 pages, and that tune is on finally. I don't think I put it out. I tried to record it. It's quite involved, but I was able to get a good version that's on the Outlier record. So if you're curious, it's just called Hermeto. And so, at that time, I really started to write. That's when I did most of my writing. I occasionally write a tune now, but I had a nice little piano, and I would just play it every day and see where things led and write them.
So all those on the first record, those Missing Link and Eyes of Recognition and all that stuff you wrote in that period, actually.
In that period.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I mean, there were other things that I was playing that I had not written out, that I would play on the piano.
Yeah.
Like tunes, but like This Rosa Street, for example. Things I would memorize, and then blow on.
Yeah.
You just memorize the form and all that.
Incredible.
So, yeah. So that, I mean, a lot of people obviously inspire me compositionally, but the impetus to do it was really Hermeto, I think.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, because you can create an environment if you have a vision.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all these guys, that's what they did, right? Yeah.
Present your vision. I'm not going to be able to do that from the drums, It's going to take a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's basically what we started our talk was compositions. That's kind of making a circle. Jeff, just one more question, like to not take too much of your time. Talking about composition, I just wanted to ask you about one record, the one with Paul Bley and Mark Johnson on bass, because you played Carla's tunes, which are amazing tunes. How was it like to play with Paul, and how did that record actually happen? I mean, that collaboration with Paul.
Well, it's funny because I had thought, Paul made a lot of records for Steeplechase, so it's like, who are we going to get this time? Nils Winther had just purchased my recording, right? I sold that to him. That was not a Steeplechase date.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only label I could get it out on, finally.
Yeah.
Trying very hard. Not the greatest deal either, I gave up publishing, but
oh shit. Oh
yeah, don't overdo that. But that was the deal. Anyway, when the recent Frank Kimbrough tribute recording was done for Nouvelle, Ben Alson told me that he told Paul to hire me.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Which I never knew.
Wow.
So, wow, okay. Now, see, I had played with Paul once, and I thought, I get this phone call. This is 1974. And so I started to make a name for myself in New York. So I'm getting calls from all sorts of people, but this is Paul Bley's secretary. He's going to be doing some recording, and probably his wife, I don't know. And he would like you to come over and play. I said, okay. So I go over with Frank Tusa, the bass player, and Paul opens the door, and this big cloud of smoke. He's got this big pipe full of marijuana, and he's got this terrible keyboard, electric keyboard, no piano. And this is at West Beth, so it's, I guess, where he's living. And I've carded my drums, so it's not like, which I was more used to doing in those days, but still. So we play for a while. And this instrument sounds so bad. It sounds like, a Casio
thing, yeah.
It's pre-Casio though. I mean, you can imagine. And we play for a while, and then I'm like, I stand up from the drum and say, so Paul, when's the record date? And Paul goes, well, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, aren't we? Or something like that. And I said, okay, fine. I just packed up and left.
Oh man, wow.
And so, you know, I did see him, one of the great concerts that this place, what was it? Axis, I think it was called, jazz club in Soho for a while in the 70s. Paul Bley solo, Sun Ra solo.
Oh wow,
Same
man. Oof.
amazing night. So I remember that. So I would see Paul occasionally play, but I didn't, you know, I didn't say anything to him. Yeah, so it just so happened, those Carla Bley tunes, getting to actually play those,
Yeah.
well, it was to me like playing with Miles or, you know, some amazing, but it was so fast. And Mark Johnson had asked for the music, and so Paul said, "Oh, okay." He brings this big stack of music that had been in a fire, so like the ink had bled through, you know, and he's like, "Here's the music," but then he wouldn't tell Mark which tune we were playing. He'd just launch into a tune,
Oh shit.
and within 5 or 6 seconds, if he didn't like what was happening, he just say, "Okay, let's try something else." So there are no alternate takes. There's no nothing. We were done in 3 hours with an hour lunch break or something. It was
Oh wow, man.
so
Wow.
it was very was very fun. Paul was a lot of fun, but you had to you know, he would try to mess with you if you couldn't take a joke, or so you know, I ended up doing a tour with him years later. So that's 91. I don't know what it was. It was at a John Abercrombie birthday party, and Paul happened to be there. And I just said, "Oh, it was really nice, you know, doing that record with you." And he said, and I said, "You know, I hope we get to play again sometime." You know, this is casual. And he goes, "Well, you know any electric bass players? Because I don't travel with the acoustic anymore." And this is the way he talks, you know. And I had just played with Matt Garrison, and
Oh really? Oh wow.
like a couple nights before that. So he's the first person I thought of. And so, you know, Jimmy's son, you know, he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, great." A year goes by, and I get a fax from Paul. "Are you and Mr. Garrison free such and such a date for a tour of Europe?" You know, and I'm like, I don't know. I am, but you'll have to ask Mr. Garrison yourself, you know. And I think another year went by, and by now his wife is communicating with me through email, and then it's always, "Could you tell Mr. Garrison these are the dates?" And I said, "Look, I'm not, you have to, here's how you get in touch with him. You talk to him, you know." It gets nearer to the time that the tour is supposed to happen, and I just think, I wonder what Mr. Garrison is doing. Well, so I go to his website. It turns out he's working with Herbie Hancock all summer. And this really irritates me, you know. So here it's, you know, not long before the tour is supposed to happen. And, you know, yeah, I'm livid. So I write back to Paul's wife, and, "Well, you know, if you guys had just gotten in touch with him sooner, not that he would have turned down Herbie, by the way, but in any case, we could have known." And she goes, "Oh, that's okay. Paul's been working with a guitar player in Ireland, so he's going to do it." So I'm thinking guitar, piano, and drums is a little odd. This is really a story for my book. I don't want to go too far, but Paul tried to, well, and other people went through this too. Basically, he just wanted to play solo. So he would hire a trio because the promoters would say, "You played solo last year. Can't you bring a group this time?" You know, and then he would play a complete solo set and then put the other two musicians on it after that by themselves. And then he'd come
Wow.
up and then he'd come up and play, you know, a minute of the last tune, and that would be the concert.
Oh,
Because this is he's a prankster.
Yeah, sure.
With the promoters, right? It was just endless fun, but I mean, not musical fun.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah, Paul plays for an hour, and the audience is like, "Okay, that's fine." And who are these guys coming up now?
That's bad.
His guitars and I had never played together, and Paul only said this like 30 seconds before we went on. He goes, "First I'll play, and then you can play," you know. And but the guitar player already knew that, because in Ireland he never played with a guitar player either, so, which I didn't know.
Oh man, that's bizarre.
He kind of tried to escape with all the money and all this, and hilarious stuff.
Yeah, I've heard stuff. Yeah, about Paul. I mean, like some people who I know who I played with him also, and told me, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. The money stories and all that. It's so that's why I asked about Paul, because you know there's always a bizarre Paul story there. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but I'm so glad we've had the experience. Not only that recording, but to actually spend time with him.
Yeah.
Just to have these conversations, and he was a very good listener, because he was constantly searching for material he could use. So it's like if he would you know, ask you questions and try to get some material out of you, you know, that he could incorporate. And the other thing he'd do is he'd get all the T-shirts and posters. Like we'd be, you know, after the concert, he'd be, you know, where were they? He must have had 50 T-shirts that he grabbed, you know, which I got a couple, you know. And, you know, he sold all this memorabilia and all this stuff to the Canadian government.
Oh, really?
And he had just done that at this time.
Oh, wow.
So this is what, 2001, for $1 million Canadian dollars. That's what I heard. So I remember the first night he's realizing this. He said, "You know what? I'll pay for dinner." The most generous he was. What a character.
Oh, the character, yeah, man, amazing.
But there were so many characters that I don't know. It's not quite the same now. People, you know, I mean, there's some characters, but not like that. Not like Thelonious Monk, what you asked me about.
Yeah.
Which, see, the thing about Monk is my mother thought he can't play the piano. What's he doing? You know, a lot of people thought that.
Yeah.
Whereas my father thought he was great and brilliant. You know.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of that, you know, I didn't know quite what to think until I saw him. I had to see him to get it.
How was that like when you saw him live? Confusing.
The first time I saw him live might have been like my first or second week at Berkeley, because Ben Riley had just left or was about to leave. And so Alan Dawson did the gig. So here's my soon-to-be teacher, or, you know, playing with Monk. And Alan played brilliantly. And Monk is getting up and dancing, you know, as he would do. And I'm like, what is this? But I swear I saw him at the Vanguard before that. Tootie Heath does a great impression of Monk, because Monk used to talk through his teeth. But Tootie Heath can actually do it. Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so many great things I got to see.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, are you actually going to write a book, or what you said before, or? Well,
People tell me, you know, I should. And
you should, but it's just like, I'm just like listening, like, you know, you should.
But you know, I'm happy to tell these little stories. I don't know if I can weave that into a book or not, you know. I did a master class few weeks ago over here and tried to make it, a story of my life kind of thing, but for the benefit of the students. One thing in particular being that it's not necessarily a straight line. Like I had this early success, and then the scene sort of changed around 1980, and I found myself having to get a job, various jobs, taking the opportunity to study with Alan and change my technique and all this stuff, and so there was a long period, not that I wasn't playing, but I'd been on this kind of trajectory that I thought would be like many professions, you just keep advancing, like that. So I wanted to tell the students that it's not like that. But I'm still playing today. So, but I think it's very important to know that now, in the fact that it's a jazz education allows you to get credentials and of a certain type. What it really is a calling. It's something I could not have helped doing. The passion drove me. I would do ridiculous things. I remember Buddy Miles. Remember Buddy Miles, the drummer?
Sure.
He had this band called the Buddy Miles Express. In my first year at Berkeley, they would play these clubs like the Psychedelic Supermarket or whatever, Boston Tea Party. These are great places. But I liked this band. It had horns, and one night I went to see them, and it was one of these things, maybe 3 different bands. It was time for him to go on. Not happening, 20 minutes. So I go back and find the dressing room. I walk in the dressing room, and there's the band, but Buddy's not there. And so I say, I've been seeing you guys. I could start, until Buddy gets here. Is that crazy or what? And they said, okay.
With Buddy Miles Express with you on drums.
Yeah. Right.
That's bizarre.
Luckily, Buddy showed up, but I would have gotten up there. I mean, that's how crazy I was. I don't know.
Oh, but yeah, it's like you said, it's the passion that drives us, I guess, to do that. And it's
definitely.
Yeah.
It was never about, hey, look at me. I just want to be in it. I just want to play the music.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, the jazz is especially, that jazz for me is also this, what you were telling me now, because it's also about the stories and about this sense of community and, this, I don't know, there's something about it that's, that makes it different than other genres, I guess. If classical world is completely different, like
different.
Or like the rock world is completely different as well, And this is like the only where it's like this. I don't know. Something is about it. I can't put it in words, but
I think it's. Well, I was going to say because there's so little money to be made.
That's also but yeah, okay.
The dedication, but that's true in every field of music potentially.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're not in it to get rich, or if you are, the music might suffer.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. No, but it's the passion, like you said, that the passion that that we read autobiographies, or that we read these stories and we are like fascinated about them. We're like, I listen to you and I'm like a small kid, like this, wow, and or you were like, I don't know, 30 years ago when you listened to a story of someone, who was older than you and told you this stuff. And that's the thing.
That's why I feel really lucky that I was able to be present in my mother's time, because I actually saw that firsthand, even though I knew what I was seeing. I saw all sorts of things. Wow. But But see, for me, it's like one line up until now. So it's hard for me to realize that, well, not really. I realize it's not the same. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but that seemed so much better. But of course it wasn't, because there was a lot of drug addiction and
it was
and segregation and horrible things. There's still horrible things, but not like that. On the other hand, I could talk, all night. Probably want to end this.
No, it's cool, man. It's beautiful to listen to this stuff, So yeah.
No, well, I guess I'm getting, what I'm getting at is, it's so easy to glorify the past.
Yeah, but it's true, because you were like, let's say, a teenager, or you were 9, or you saw that through a 9-year-old child or 11-year-old, and it's, for me, it's also the same when I remember the first time I heard, some of the first jazz cats that I heard. I still, when I put those records sometimes on now, I'm like, nah, okay. But when I was a kid, well,
So they said they don't sound.
Well,
they don't sound.
this don't. No. So let's say like one of the first records of the Pat Metheny group, like the.
Okay.
They're amazing records now, but I then you as a musician or me as a musician, then I went into Ornette and to Monk, and you start to discover free improvisation, and then when I put that on, it's like, well, it's a nice record, but
it's right. It produces a different feeling.
Yeah.
For one thing, it doesn't have too many sharp edges or.
Yeah, and back then it was for me really like, man, that's what I want to do, and it's still beautiful, but it just doesn't, from a musical standpoint of view now, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's nice, So, but what I mean is like, when I was 16, that's what it was, a different mindset as well, and it's how I saw things. So, yeah.
I started hearing jazz so early that, like those Ahmad Jamal trio records with Israel Crosby and Fournier still sound great to me. And well, they're such a deep part of my life. I just play them every day.
Yeah, that's some incredible music. Yeah, definitely.
So I think I had good taste also. But
yeah, sure. Cool, Jeff. I will not steal more of your evening time. So
that's okay.
Yeah. But thanks so much for sharing some of these thoughts. Beautiful. I really
thanks so much
appreciate
for having me. It was really nice to talk with you.
Yeah. So
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.